Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Kath, brilliant to have you here. To kick off, please introduce yourself and tell everybody about your great work.
Great. So thanks for inviting me, Alan. So I'm Welsh originally, but I've been living in Australia for quite a number of years. And my profession, I guess, is organisational psychology. So I get involved in any work that helps make workplaces better places to be. And I do have a very specific interest in resilience. So I've actually founded a company which was called Working with Resilience, which we have a number of assessments and resources, and that's used internationally. And I've just sold it. So I'm going to be concentrating a little bit more on coaching and mediation and consulting from here on in.
Great, thanks, Kath. Your surname's McEwen, so is that not your maiden name?
No, no, it's a Scottish name,
That's
but a
what I
New
was
Zealand
thinking.
husband. So,
Right, okay.
yeah, so
And
yes.
and what part of Wales is your heritage?
Okay, I come from Newport, so hello everyone out there in Newport land. Yeah, and I went to school in Pontypridd.
Okay. So my dad was from Wrexham, so I think probably in your
Right?
part of Wales, they sometimes don't even
Yes.
regard that as part of Wales. But I associate more with being Welsh than I do being British for some reason. I think it's to do with the Celts having a bit more spirit and something about them.
Ah, beautiful. Well, I'm definitely still Welsh in my heart and my soul. So even though I probably sound a bit more Aussie-fied these days and have Aussie children, and I had a Kiwi husband. So yeah, very multicultural in our house. Good for the rugby.
So I think you know what we're going to do. We're going to choose a
Yes.
card from the deck. So what I'd like you to do is tell me how many piles of cards you'd like me to make in front of me.
Okay, let's do six. Give you a bit more work to do. We'll do six.
That's okay. So 6 piles of cards. They're different sizes. I'm not bothering to try and make them
Yeah.
the same sort of size. So now I've got those 2, 4, 6. So pile one is on my left, pile six is on my right. So which number pile would you like me to choose?
Add one on the right. There's six on the right.
Number
Number
six.
six.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think that's probably one of the larger piles. So let me just count how many cards we've got. 3, 6, 9, 10, 14 cards. So a number between 1 and 14.
Well, let's do six.
Six again.
So devil's number eight, 666, not very good for a values jam.
That's the end of my telephone number, actually.
I see. Oh, is it?
So this is what you've chosen.
Oh, self-discipline, my goodness, something I don't have a lot of.
Well, this will be interesting to see where we go then. So, and actually, I tend to have a similar reaction to this. It's like, oh, self-discipline. So
Yes.
let's start with what that means. So, what does self-discipline mean to you? And that's kind of the more kind of theoretical question. And then there's a follow-up question, which is, what does it look, feel, and sound like? And you can start with either.
Mm. So self-discipline, probably, as I said, it doesn't really look like me, but let's go back a bit. So if I was to be self-disciplined, I would be very, very clear, I guess, on the direction and have sort of clear goals, if you like, and would be able to conscientiously and consistently move towards whatever it is that goal was. So it is about keeping on track. It is about making sure that you're consistent in your approach, as I said. Um, so what does it look like? If I'm looking at someone doing that, I'm seeing them achieve things through um, reining in distractions, keeping on track. And there's a bit about being true to what you want to do as well, which is maybe where a values piece for me comes in. I'm reminded here actually, Ellen, of being a psychologist, you do lots of assessments, and I used to do work in careers, and I can remember doing an assessment that looked at your motivations, and I was really high on achievement and really low on goal orientation. And this is what I'm thinking of when I'm saying it's not really me, because I love to have lots of things that I'm looking at achieving and, lots of variety in that. But goals have never been anything that's really worked for me. It's more of being opportunistic and curiosity and learning rather than saying, I want to do this or I want to be that. So this is probably the juxtaposition for me with this word is um, I think I'm self-disciplined in pieces, but not necessarily altogether towards a goal. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but you can be, I think, high in achievement and low in goal orientation. Well, that's what the assessment said to me, and I think it's probably right.
Well, you're opening up this conversation in a beautiful way, actually, because first, when you talk about high achievement, low on goals, I couldn't understand why I found goals a bit kind of restraining. And I think it's very similar to you that I think we have a false sense of security about how valuable goals are because especially because we live in a more and more dynamic world where everything's changing
Mhm.
so much. And there's something this is really quite spooky. You said something in the middle of when you were giving your first reaction. You said something about being true to who you are and referenced values. And I've written down here true to who you are before you actually said that, because I think self-discipline could be applied to goals, but it
Mhm.
could equally be applied to not having goals.
Mhm.
If you've got the
Mhm.
self-discipline not to be drawn into that false sense of security of having goals just because people say you should, that is a form of self-discipline, right? Um,
Yeah, so it's interesting because it's self-discipline around authenticity rather than
yeah,
self-discipline around activity. And it's
yeah,
really interesting, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about how much my coaching approach has changed. So I think when coaching first became a sort of a profession, it was a lot of, wasn't it, around goals orientation, it was
yeah,
all around, what is it you need to do. And even now, I'm sure, if you coach as well, you have people come with a set of goals, but quite often those goals are not the real story. They also are constantly shifting because, as you said, there's so much shift and change. So what you might need to do, a month ago is not necessarily what you need to do now. So I think in working with people, it is very much more around not having anything set in concrete, but where are you now and what do you need to do and what are your, what is your values and purpose within that, if you like. So not entirely throwing away goals, but just making them so much more flexible, not fixed, and making it more around the journey of staying on track rather than the destination. So I think I've fundamentally, I really don't like working with goals, especially if they're imposed goals in my coaching work.
yeah. You remind me also of in organizations. I don't know whether you will have had this experience, but my experience in organizations is that there's a kind of repeated story or pattern of something new is dreamt up and there's
Hmm.
loads of enthusiasm around it and people are really excited about putting it in place. And then somebody says, well, we need to put processes around this to make sure that it's sustainable. And for some reason, those processes seem often to suck the life out of the idea that originated. and then it becomes like people are just doing it for the process rather than the original idea. And it's this thing about us
Mm,
easily getting distracted from the end and getting totally
mhm,
consumed with the means to the end.
mhm,
And
mhm,
I think that relates to what you were talking about authenticity and goals, because I can understand conceptually that if you want to be authentic, then it kind of makes sense to put some goals in place. But then it
mhm.
seems what happens is people become all consumed with the goals and forget about the reason they put them in the first place.
Yeah, and so going back to the new idea, so often in organizational space, things are fads as well. They're actually a different language for the same thing. And so you're creating, as you say, all of this infrastructure around a fad that detracts from the actual reason why you wanted the fad in the beginning. So, I mean, I don't think over, 50 years, there's been much change in organizational behavior, but we have all these different labels and all these different ways of looking at it, and we build all these infrastructures. But what we need to do really is quite basic and hasn't changed. Hmm.
Mm. And then picking up on the kind of more metaphor answers. So for me, self-discipline looks like a pause. So it's this high degree of conscious awareness, I suppose, rather
Mhm.
than just rushing into something. For what does it sound like? I just thought of so when you consider something. So and the
Yes.
feeling is one of um, I don't. The word control comes to mind, and it's not the right word, but it is something about not feeling beholden to what's going on around you, and you being able to make the choice that you want to make. So whether that's considered or I don't know what a good word.
Constrained, yeah. So is the pause a constraining force or is the pause a reflective force? And I think they're very, very different, aren't they? Because
Yeah,
if I was to think of the pause as a reflective one, well, absolutely, I would embrace that. If I was to think of the pause as a restraining one, as in being disciplined, you know, I probably it's not really me, which is it's probably that word discipline that is tricky, isn't it? Because it does inform sometimes a feeling of being constrained and controlled.
totally agree, and I
Mm,
don't like
mm.
I've fought for decades against that word, but interestingly enough, I can't remember which chapter it is in one of my books, but it caused me to research the root of the word discipline. And actually, disciplinare, I seem to remember, is the Latin root, which is about following and being a disciple.
Oh,
So
of course, yeah.
discipline
Mhm.
was never intended to be,
Yes.
this thing
Mm.
about constraint and you're not allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that. It's more about understanding and joining in, um, which I remember being really pleasantly
Mm.
surprised about and having a better view of discipline.
So if you say self-discipline, then that implies following myself. So if we think of self as a concept, which is the core of who we are in terms of what we stand for and who we believe, then a follower of our true self is quite a nice reframe.
Isn't it just? Yeah. So what a great start. Let's go very practical, and we'll go to the opposite side of self-discipline. And from what you were saying in your kind of first comments, you'll have this top of head. Where have you noticed a lack of self-discipline?
Oh my goodness, quite frequently. I think for me, I like freedom and I like variety. I've got a really good example of this actually, where I decided it would be really interesting to go and work in an organization for a little while, just part-time. And I just could not embrace anything that was going to confine me. Like people would say, "What days are you working?" And I would always come up with some fabrication of, "Oh, well, I come in when I'm needed," and, all this sort of stuff. But it was sort of like I didn't feel that that I had the self-discipline to fit within a structure because it was totally against my need for independence and freedom of thought and not being confined. So this is probably why I'd be an absolutely hopeless employee because I just not very good at being part of a system that confines me. So that's an example of the opposite of. Not that I'm
Okay.
saying you have to be totally self-disciplined in an organization, but you certainly need to be willing to fit within the confines. And yeah, I'm not sure I'm very good at that.
And I've got a bit of a flippant example to start with, and then a professional one. So the flippant one is
Yeah.
chocolate. I,
Ah,
if it's
okay, yes.
if it's in the fridge and it just needs to be eaten. And yet I remember not having chocolate in the house, and I'm okay with that. So it's a bit weird, really. But if it's there, I tend to enjoy it. Um, in a work situation, what you just described reminded me of a guy that asked me to take a profile test, and what he said was that I was in the lowest percentile of people that were suited to a corporate environment.
Oh,
And
wow.
yet that's what I'd done all of my career for
Yeah.
then it must have been about 15 years. But what we worked out was that the corporate jobs that I had always done were those that nobody else wanted to do, that were kind of, sort of black sheep of the family type thing, and was a mess and needed sorting out. And so I guess, although it was within a corporate environment, it gave me the freedom that you're talking about because
Yes.
it just didn't fit in with the way the normal organization worked.
Wow. So as you're talking there, I'm thinking of the other element of that assessment that I mentioned. I was also very low on conscientiousness, which you would think, well, how can you, if you're not conscientious, how can you achieve? But because I'm high on achievement and high on independence and high on freedom, then they became the main things that I had to manage to be conscientious. And so an example that I could then put to chocolate, because I'm probably a chocoholic as well, is that I buy quite often expensive dark chocolates that in Adelaide, in Australia, people would know Hayes chocolates, they're to die for. But because they're expensive, I'll only eat one. So, so again, being able to have self-discipline, yeah, but still the freedom to do it, sort of trying to live a bit of both worlds, if you like. So
This is a bit
our
strange.
private
This is happening.
disclosures on chocolate here.
Well, it not only that, but such similar strategies. So I buy good chocolate and then don't have too much of it and really enjoy it. So
Exactly.
similar
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Funny.
And then when you were talking about, you remember just now when you said people say, "What? When are you coming in?" And you said, "Well, I'll come in when I need," and all that. There's a book, I think it's called Hyper Efficient, which has recently won an award. And the author, our book was shortlisted for this award thing, and so we were there in our category. She was the overall winner, and her book is about how we should pay more attention to our natural rhythms and when we're ready to do certain tasks, rather than the more traditional calendar and task list approach where you decide in advance when you're going to do stuff and then kind of some reason it doesn't work out sometimes and other times it does. And at the end, in her acceptance speech, she said something like, my big takeaway of this was that you need to follow your dreams. And if you believe in something at the beginning, you just need to see it through, because so many people poo-pooed her hypothesis at the beginning, and yet there she was at the end with people praising her and congratulating her and winning this book award.
Love it. And again, that reminds me of early in my career when the diaries came out, the planners. Do you remember where you had your
Yeah.
year plan, your month plan, your daily plan? So I got given this, and all it had over it was scribble, scribble of ideas, scribble of things. And I do remember running a leadership course once, and they talked about, again, there are some people who like to do multiple things at once and weave, and then the weave becomes, the weave eventually creates an outcome, but it's sort of like it's not necessarily firmly there. There might be a bit of a lighthouse, but the actual direction. And I think that's very much and I think you have to be able to think conceptually to be able to do that, to see all the different parts of it and the patterns of it that you can then use to create something, versus saying, right, to do this, I need to do this A, B, C, D, and E. And often the opportunities of A, B, C, D, and E don't happen anyway. So I'm very opportunistic in the way I work. So, that seems right. It feels right. It looks good. Let's go with that. Oh, well, no, maybe that's not quite the way. Let's bring it back here. So very much a weaving journey, I think. Yeah.
Well, this plays to, I can't remember whether we touched on this in our previous conversation, but my grandmother said to me when I was a young boy that you need to follow your nose. And I
Oh,
sometimes now wonder whether that's why I operate in the value space, because ultimately that's what that is.
yes,
And in the last
yes,
probably only 5 years, I've gained more confidence just to do that, and if something has energy and appeals, do it and see what
yes.
happens. And that
Do you
kind
think
of,
nose is another word? Do you think nose was her word for intuition?
maybe, maybe. I'll never know. I'd love to have a conversation with her
Yeah,
whether she
yeah.
meant anything by it or not. But this has led to me over the last couple of years asking a couple of questions of people, which is interesting. One, or I find interesting. One is, if everything that is consists of the known and the unknown, what
Yes.
percentage would you attribute to each of those two things? And so I don't know
1% known.
what, pardon?
Yeah. 1% known, 99% unknown.
All right. So that, and generally that's where people are at. Some people are even lower than that. A few people are a little bit higher than that, but not so many. And so then I ask the question, so why would you confine yourself to the known?
Yes.
If
Yes.
99%
And
of what
how do
is,
you learn the unknown? Well, you learn the unknown through the journey of curiosity and exploration.
exactly. I mean, just
Just
logically,
following your nose.
and then the other part of this is to invite people to think of an achievement that they've had, and then to
Yes.
seriously consider what they contributed to that outcome
Yes.
versus other people's contributions and circumstance. And most people
Yes.
realize that they had less to do with their achievement than they originally thought they had. So those
Yes.
to me are two really good ways to justify this experimentation, curiosity, exploration kind of approach.
Yes, because everything is the people you meet along the way, the ideas that you get, and yeah, and the context and what life brings you. I remember talking. I can't remember what it was, but they were talking about how you meet your partner, and how many people met people in just really random places. I mean, I know we've got online dating now, but most people, it's a random encounter that you could never have planned. That's where I'm going to go, to be around there because that's potentially where I'm going to meet a partner. So, yeah, I'd like to pick up on intuition because I think following your nose, intuition is something that guides me a lot. And again, it's about that unconscious, the unknown, isn't it? But I guess the more you have been in a scenario, the more the intuition does pull back on all of the memories and experiences you've had. But I still think that for me, a lot of the decisions on is that the way or that the way has been, I call it gut rather than nose, because nose might be more curiosity, gut's more instinctive. Yeah, I think I've been very big on intuition. And maybe that's the Welsh, maybe the Welsh witch.
Well,
Oh, my
I
mother
mean,
was born on Halloween. Used
oh
to call her
really?
the Welsh witch. Yeah, she.
And it's kind of maybe it's difficult to do anything other than kind of laugh about it because we don't understand some things that happen. And I'm not a great one for like the law of attraction and things like this. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I think some people have done that kind of space a bit of a disservice in some way, but too many things have happened to me that have been positive and that I've not been able to. Oh, I can tell you one about Wales.
Oh,
So
good.
I was working on a prison project near Wrexham, and I was
Okay.
driving from London to Wrexham, and I'm not actually sure where this was, but it was in Wales on that route, and it was very rural. So just loads of trees around, and my car stopped, just cut out. So I'm like, oh, I've got an hour and a half to get there. I hope that the, assistance people are going to be able to get here quickly enough, get my phone out. No signal. Okay. Plan B, it's obvious. Go and knock on somebody's door and ask to use their phone. Look around, no houses. Now I'm starting to worry. And then around about 10 minutes later, a tow truck drove past, stopped, and the guy said, well, what's up? And can I tow you to where you're going? Now,
Right.
what's that about?
I will tell you another story about Welsh in Australia in a car breaking down. So I'm going to visit a mine for work, and I'm in a ute, and the ute runs out of petrol, and I'm out of Tennant Creek in the middle of the bush, very hot day, nowhere around, just red dust, literally in the middle of nowhere. No phone. In those days, there was no GPS, so I was just a mud map. Someone pulls up. Hello, my lovely.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, what's happened to you then? I said, oh, I'm on the way to the mine and my car ran out of petrol. Oh, well, I'm the manager of the mine. So I said, oh my goodness. I said, you're Welsh. And I said, I'm Welsh. And he said, oh, he says, would you mind coming back and having a cup of tea with my wife? She never sees anyone anymore. And she would love to see someone from Wales. So he takes me back. I sort of I sit in the house, have a cup of tea with his wife, talk about Wales. He fills a couple of jerry cans. We do our meeting. He takes me back to the ute. We fill up the ute and off we go. So there you go. Two stories on breaking down in Wales.
Two brilliant
So
stories.
yeah,
And so
so
I guess
so
I should.
someone was looking down on us, I think.
Well, and maybe something else, but something.
The
And
universe. Yeah.
I guess it's like I've learned that I used to kind of be like, so what happened there? What's the explanation? And now it doesn't matter, does it? It's just thank goodness it
Yeah.
happened.
No, no,
And I
no.
should apologize because I kind of, what did I do? I jumped our conversation somewhere. So I made the jump from we were talking about intuition and not being able to explain stuff to those stories. And I guess the
Yeah.
connection is that I think it's this not necessarily being able to understand or explain something. So with our intuition,
Yeah.
we don't know
Yes.
why, but there's just something. And I had a chat with ChatGPT the other morning asking the question, is our brain a better planner than we realize sometimes? Because we do all these lists and all the rest of it, but actually sometimes I find that I just do stuff at the right time without these systems in place. So it's like, and with neuroscience, we know so much more now than we did, say, 10 years ago. And I'm sure that's going to continue. And I wonder what we're going to learn.
Oh, I absolutely agree. The other thing that as you're talking, I'm thinking of too is that I've become more and more flexible when things don't happen because I reconcile that it wasn't the time. It wasn't the time for that, that time will come or it won't come. So, especially over the last couple of years, I've had some quite significant transitions where things haven't quite gone in the order that would have been ideal. But in the end, they've all actually worked out to happen at the best time. But of course, at the time, you get frustrated. So I've let a lot of that frustration go now around self-discipline, if you like, that's time framed. This has to happen by then. And yeah, put it to the universe will decide is one of the things that I say quite often these days.
So, and I'm curious now about this balance between what you've just described and your strong sense of achievement, because this is something
Mm,
else that resonates with me because I I also believe that things will happen as they happen. We have less control than we think. But then I do have a little bit of a niggle that says once you start to accept that, then you will not achieve as much because you're not pushing things forward in the way that you might have done because you're saying, oh, well, it's nothing to do with me. So what's your take on that?
So what do I do is I flip to something else. I'm very, very good
Ah,
at
yeah.
adjustment of being. I think it might be something to do with, coming, migrating from Wales, at 16, and everything you ever knew is gone, and you're reinventing. So I think I'm really good at being adaptable. So when that lane is closed temporarily, not permanently, when that lane's closed temporarily, I can really, really quickly flip to the other lane. And then the time for the lane that was flipped from may come or may not come, but I'm still progressing and I'm still moving forward. And I think for me, it's so important to be moving forward. Otherwise, I feel that's the frustration is not moving forward rather than that lane not progressing, I think. So you do, for me anyway, I need multiple things going on to enable that flip. I'm not invested in one thing or only. I'm invested in a multitude of things, not all work, obviously, but across the
Yeah.
gamut of things I'm doing.
Yeah, and again, another parallel because it's the same for me. And when you were just describing that, I was thinking about why do I do the same as you? Yes, I have a variety of things going on. Yes, they do tend to have kind of timelines in place that then flex. So, for instance, with somebody else, we're co-authoring a book about a children's book about kindness. So it's a little girl playing in a grandma's garden who is befriended by Buzz the bee, who then teaches her all about the different ways to be kind. Now, that was due to be launched last year. And because the illustrator has had some issues, it wasn't. And yes, we were frustrated, but well, you just got to work it out. And when the book arrives, people will love it. It will be a brilliant
Mm,
addition
mm,
edition in the world.
mm.
And so
Yes.
let's just carry on. And if there's a pause, then go and do something else with
Yeah.
that time. But don't
Yeah.
let it's return on effort, I think, that's coming back for me. So what I don't want to do is to be frustratedly trying to push something forward that is stuck.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so go and do something else and it'll probably free up.
Yes. And I think that when you come back to it, you have also a different perspective. So if we go back to the concept of pause that we were talking about, is it a constraining pause where, oh my goodness, we're not going to get it done? or is it a pause that allows reflection? So I think certainly I know when I've written things, whether it's a book or whatever it might be, when I've had a break from that and a pause and gone back, I do have quite different perspectives that I bring to it and a fresh energy. So I think there's also that aspect of it as well. That's really
Totally
good.
agree.
Yeah,
And that's just
yeah.
happened in this. I mentioned that I was on jury service. That's just happened
Hmm.
this month. So another book project involves a contribution from a person in every country in the world.
Wow.
And that is proving really time consuming. Now, last year we decided that rather than wait for the whole book to be finished, we would put kind of sample content on a website so that people could get a feel for it and place
Hmm.
pre-orders and stuff like this. And just it's in the last couple of days. I just had the thought, oh, I wonder whether those contributions from everybody around the world, maybe we shouldn't wait for those to be in the book. Maybe we should publish the book without them and then use the website to house all of this wonderful content. And I haven't even discussed this with the co-author yet,
Hmm.
but we will. And like you say, without that pause, this
Hmm.
idea would never have come, and I would have been more in the mindset of, oh, got to get some more, got to make
Hmm.
time to approach this person in this and all that. So a different perspective. I guess I'm echoing what you said about a different perspective can sometimes be hugely more valuable than extra effort.
It's just a reimagining. So the downside sometimes can be too many things, too many paths. And then if it's overwhelming or you're busy, then I think busyness doesn't allow that pause, which is reflective pause. So, for me, 50 million things on the go, paring back all of that quite considerably because I think, yeah, that cannot work either. Hmm.
Can I ask you a question about that then? Because I
Mhm.
I do feel overstretched sometimes.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of stuff online about it's the beginning of the year. You need to make hard choices about
Oh yeah.
what to drop and all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I read this, but then I think, but these things I'm involved with are just too good to let go. Maybe they should
Mm,
take a bit
mm.
longer, but I'm not going to drop them. It's more how do you
Yes, to make them longer.
realign?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Take
yeah.
longer, but also what you were saying earlier around where does your energy draw you at the moment? So I mean, we are lucky in being self-employed. We can follow our energy, whereas of course it's not that easy when you work for an employer. But yeah, what energizes me that needs my attention right now that I can advance is probably better than I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do the other. The other thing that, I mean, when you talked about everyone's, goals shouldn't be confined to, 1st of January and New Year's, um, you know, what's it called, resolutions and all those
Yeah.
sorts of things. So I think the other thing I've seen the theme of since we started is so many people posting on LinkedIn and the importance of a break and being refreshed and reflective. It's sort of like the beginning of the year brings all of these things around. I'm refreshed, I'm relaxed, I'm now ready to, embrace everything and do everything, and I'm going to be doing all of that. That doesn't need to be the beginning of the year. I don't think it can be any time.
Yeah,
Mm.
I totally agree. And I think I read, again, this might be a book. I can't really remember if it is a book or not, but it is all about fresh starts. It's a lady, she's an academic. Oh, I can't remember her name, but she's basically saying you can choose when your fresh start is. It doesn't have to be the beginning of the year. It could be the beginning of a week, beginning
Mm,
of a
mm,
month, beginning of a project, all of that sort of
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, love
Mm.
that. Love
Now,
that.
so I'm going to put that in my head because we'll come to it just as we wrap up, but I don't want to
Mhm.
do a spoiler. I've got a request of you now. So in ValuesJam, you can
Mhm.
create your own question. So I'm going to invite
Mhm.
you to ask a question to us. And if you've got the answer immediately, you can go first, or if you prefer, I can go first. So please ask your own question about self discipline beginning with who, what, where, when, why, or how.
So my question to myself is, why can you have achieved what you have without self-discipline?
Okay,
Which
and
is the
are you going to
question we've
answer
been
first?
reflecting on. Hmm? Can
And
I
are you
answer
going
it?
to? Yeah, please do.
I think I have answered it because what we've done is we've said self-discipline is not one directional, it's not imposed, it's very much fellowship of self, as we said. So I've been able to achieve things because I've been able to follow my true self. And that is my version of self-discipline.
Yeah, maybe people watching might be disappointed at this, but my answer's not going to be very much different. Um, I suppose the bit that I would add is that I think from this conversation, I'm thinking that when we use the term self-discipline, two
Mhm.
things, I guess. One is that certainly both of us seem to have a bit of a downer on it, and I thank you for reminding me of that origination of the word about disciple and all that, because it helps me have a better relationship with the word, one. And then the second thing is that we seem to apply it at a more task-based level when really it should be a more conceptual level. So to your point about being true to self, that's far more important in terms of self-discipline than completing a task list that you should have done at the beginning of the
Mm.
day. So
Mm.
for people to
Mm.
pay more attention to self-discipline at a higher level rather than an execution level.
And I think it's also made me reflect on, I mean, what we tend to often do with other people, particularly those in our family. Sometimes we we might we might think of them as having no self-discipline because they haven't followed through on the tasks we think they should have followed through on. And I think managers too would often lament self-discipline in the teams they lead, So again, yeah, of course there is a bit of that, you do have to achieve, but that our version of self-discipline might not be the version that they need to achieve whatever it is ultimately we need them to achieve. That's my takeaway, I think.
Mm. And you're making me think that sometimes leaders kind of dumb down the situation to use as a weapon.
Mhm.
And that's not the point of leadership, right?
They overdo the discipline bit, as in disciplinary.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, that feels like a good natural time to draw this values jam to a close. And there's always a final question, which is what are you encouraged to do differently about self-discipline as a result of this conversation?
I think the one is I've just mentioned, which is how I view my perception of self-discipline of others when they're not actually working consistently towards something that I believe they should have as their goals. Because why should I impose that on others when it's something that I wholeheartedly have refuted for myself?
So, yeah, absolutely. So, for me, two things I'm going to do. One is I'm wondering why I had that kind of better relationship with the word discipline because of the root. And then I sense that I've kind of moved away from that again. But I wonder whether that's because I don't use the word very often. So to have a regular reminder that discipline's not a bad word, I think would be a good thing for me to work out how to do. And
Right.
I'm going to find that research on starting something, it not necessarily being the beginning of the new year, to send to you, because I think
Oh,
it
thank
might be of interest.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, Alan.
All right, Kath, so you're now a fully qualified values jammer. So
Woo!
thanks for having the
Do I get a little
self-discipline.
badge or something?
Thanks
Little
for having the
badge.
self-discipline to join the call.
Pleasure.
All right, take
Thank you.
care. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.